With this new presidential election, Donald Trump has become a prominent figure with his trademark "say it like it is" rhetoric. His speeches have been overwhelmingly racist, especially toward the Mexican and Mexican-American community, and this encourages a xenophobic mentality across the United States.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Trump stereotyping us as rapists and wanting to create a wall is just downright ridiculous. First of all, I feel like it would just take a lot of the money that we could potentially put elsewhere. I just think it's ridiculous.
Everyone always focuses on Mexicans. That's why he makes it such a big deal, because he knows that people will follow him if he talks about Mexicans.
You're not indigenous.
Oh, really? Well, then you aren't, and you're just whatever you are, but I don't know what it is. Mongrel?
Mongrel, oh, you
I mean, come on. No, but what are you telling me? Because because I look like this? Yeah, I do probably better than you.
Well, then tell me what a mongrel is.
A mix.
You just called me a mongrel.
Yeah.
And it saddens me to think that someone's struggles are just immediately invalidated and someone's struggles are just so quickly gone to waste just by simply being deported because of the skin tone, because they speak a different language or because they don't necessarily fit this sort of American mold that Trump is trying to kind of bring back and reel in.
I really wasn't paying much attention or caring to learn much about my culture or my background, if you will. And after hearing all the speeches that he was making and all the rude comments that he was making, it made me feel like it was time for me to take a stand to help our culture, our group together, that we need to fight for what we believe in, our freedom.
Some of Trump's supporters are Mexican Americans, and this has to do with a concept called cultural alienation, which is the process of devaluing or abandoning one's own culture or cultural background, or the white is right mentality, which is destructive toward the Mexican American community because it promotes institutionalized self-hatred.
Even in work situations, I feel like I've come across a lot of older generation Mexican Americans that feel like because Trump is white and has so much power, I feel like they think that they want to vote for this person even though they're not necessarily in tune with what he stands for. And that saddens me because Trump is just not necessarily going to be helping America whatsoever when it comes to building this sort of relationship between these different people in this melting pot America. I think one of the major things that have always kind of made a lasting impression on me was this quote that Edward James Olmos said in Selena, the movie with Jennifer Lopez.
Listen, being Mexican American is tough. Anglos jump all over you if you don't speak English perfectly. Mexicans jump all over you if you don't speak Spanish perfectly. We gotta be twice as perfect as anybody else. Why are you laughing? What's so funny?
Nothing.
I'm serious. Our family has been here for centuries, and yet they treat us as if we just swam across the Rio Grande. I mean, we gotta know about John Wayne and Pedro Infante. We gotta know about Frank Sinatra and Agustin Lara. We gotta know about Oprah and Christina. And we gotta prove to the Mexicans how Mexican we are, and we gotta prove to the Americans how American we are. We gotta be more Mexican than the Mexicans and more American than the Americans, both at the same time. It's exhausting.
And I think he put that in such a perspective for me growing up because it made so much sense. I always felt like I didn't necessarily fit within this niche that was Mexican culture necessarily. And I also felt like I didn't fit in with the Americans, whether it was because of my skin tone, whether it was because of my accent when I spoke in English. But I think that's one of the things that definitely resonated with me.
Although there is a divide Trump is creating by promoting the white is right mentality, his efforts are also backfiring by uniting all people of color to fight for their right to be respected as human beings.
I think Donald Trump's comments makes the Mexican community stronger. We know that we can not all come together as a family, but also rely on other people to join us not only Mexicans but other races that agree with everything that we're going through. Like they know that we like change this community.
Definitely have had an impact on all of us in a community, even with the African Americans. Like a lot of his protests, I see that there's a bunch of groups gathering up that aren't just Mexicans, which makes me feel better that we are all willing to like work together to like fight him on this. I mean, clearly we're not the only ones that think what he's doing is wrong.
The benefits of solidarity is affecting the Mexican American community in a positive way. But we, as a Mexican American people, need to remind ourselves to have pride in our beautiful culture.
I think this new wave of having pride in being a Chicano was started. I saw a lot of posts on Facebook and social media where people are kind of starting to snowball this whole Chicano idea and the idea of being unapologetically Mexican and unapologetically like within that subculture, and I think it's starting to kind of get a rise, which is always a good thing.
We have people like Sonia Sotomayor, who is a Supreme Court justice. We have people like Robert Rodriguez, a very successful and talented director. We have George Lopez, you know, we had Selena. We have people like Linda Ronstadt, who was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, we have to remind ourselves that we influence this culture just as much as anybody else does, and we have a right to be here.
There's a lot that I like about my culture. One of the biggest things has definitely been music for me. I like the idea of being able to gather with family and dance cumbia, dance salsa. I'm a big fan of literature, so anything that ranges from like Laura Esquivel and I think Pablo Neruda are also favorites of mine. I like poetry a lot. So anything that comes from that sort of like Mexican background that's very full of like a richness in family values, a richness in anything that has to do with unity, I think is what I really appreciate about Mexican culture. And all I have to say really to everyone that's watching and needs that little bit of fire instilled in them, all I have to say is, ¿Qué hubo, raza? What are you waiting for? Make a change, make a difference.